circles aren't a new thing, they've been around for a long time. There's a really fab blog by Heather on our blog page which goes into a brief history of circles, and she tells a story about Judith, who is a lady who has a physical disability, really intellectual, well-educated lady, worked full-time, needed some support in her life. The only place that Judith could live at that time was in a residential home in an institution, and she was supported in a way that made sense to the institution, not really in the way that really made sense to her. So not having the great life that we expect for people. Judith met with Marcia Forrest and Marcia's husband Jack Pierpoint, and through conversations and slowly inviting other people into the lives, other friends of Judith, sort of organically developed a circle of support. And through conversation, and it still amazes me and really delights me that by people coming together and having those conversations that change can happen, and that by a small group of people they can be really influential in bigger areas. So through conversations and through Judith's circle, they were really instrumental in promoting inclusion for anybody, and this all happened in Canada. So yeah, promoting inclusion for everybody. Judith was one of the first people that ended up enabled to have a budget where she could get her own personal assistant, so that her support was really flexible to her needs. And that was in about the 1970s, so we know that circles of support have been around for a long time. And probably in about 1990, another influential guy, John O'Brien, really influential in the world of learning disability and working to support people, came over to the UK and supported people to have some meetings and to think about circles and how could that be developed. It hasn't really grown as widespread as we would like. We know that circles achieve fantastic outcomes for people, and not just for that person, but for the circle members and for the wider community, but never really developed at scale. And possibly one of the reasons is the facilitator was always seen as somebody who had to have a real experience in person-centred approaches, experience of services and planning. Often it was a family member whose responsibility was to organise the circle meetings when they already had a full-time role as a carer perhaps. So never really developed at scale, so they've been in pockets and around for a long time. And we know other areas where circles of support are being used. Circles of accountability for people who are offenders, so when they're coming back to live, in a community, and have a really good success rate around reoffending. There's another circles network that is based in the Midlands, so we know that there are pockets. And some time ago, the London School of Economics did some research into circles of support, and has a really strong economic case for circles. Really supportive within people's community, really supports the well-being of family members, really supports people enabled to live in their own home. So a couple of years ago, so we know all this information, we know that circles lead to great things for people, we know that there's an economic case for circles, we know that however fantastic people are supported, when it's paid support, it doesn't replace the quality that people get from having a reciprocal valued relationship. So a couple of years ago, Helen Sanderson and Max Neal wrote a paper around circles of support and personalisation. So Max and Helen has wrote this paper. There was a lot of conversation around families asking for circles of support, hearing about it, knowing that they lead to great things for people. So a few of us were invited to get together to think about how we could develop circles of support at scale so that anybody who wanted one could ask for one. And history shows that they've mostly been around for people with a learning disability, and we wanted to develop that a bit wider so that anybody could ask for a circle. So over the last couple of years, we started off, there was a conference in Preston, promoting circles of support and getting people engaged, and experiences of people who had a circle and sharing that story. We've started a pilot project in Stockport, working with families with people with a learning disability, and developing that. And the work has just sort of snowballed. We've got providers in Wigan and Manchester that are getting on board. We were able to get some funding. Helen Sanderson Associates has a charity arm of their company called HSA Foundation, who were able to fund Helen Smith's role as a coordinator in Greater Manchester into Derbyshire a little bit. So she's developing community circles there. And my post, the first community circles connector that's been funded by a provider. So Alternative Futures fund my post. So my role is around supporting people with a learning disability who we support, and also part of our contribution to Rochdale to work with people who are living with dementia in Rochdale. So I think the ethos around community circles, we know that relationships really matter. I think everybody in this room is really different, and you all have things that will be important to you and what good support looks like. But when I talk to people, there is always seems to be a common theme around people in your life, those relationships that give you quality. And like I've said, I think however fantastic people's paid support is, it's having that reciprocity and contributions and connections and having a valued role with other people. So it might be that, you know, you've got a great neighbour and a great friend, and I guess community circles is a different way of enabling that support to take place.